Welcome back to the Aetherdrift limited set review. In this video, I'll be discussing the red cards and how good I think they're going to be in upcoming limited environment. If you haven't been to one of my set reviews before, I use a 5-tier system to evaluate cards. The tiers are loosely based around when you would pick a card in a draft pod. Tier 1 is good, Tier 5 is bad. If you like set review content, other limited content like this, feel free to subscribe to get more of that whenever I make it. Adrenaline Jockey is the first card in red. 2 in a red for 3/3. Whenever a player casts a spell, if it's not their turn, this creature deals 4 damage to them, and whenever you activate an exhaust ability, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. I actually I had this in tier 3, I moved it up to tier 2. I think I'm going to move it back down to tier 3 again. Hold on. I re-racked again. So the thing about this card it is a 3-mana 3/3, and like exhaust abilities, I'm not really sold on them. I'm a big believer in max speed. Like getting your speed to max is something that I think you want to do and is like the best thing to be doing. Doing like exhaust stuff, I just don't really know if like you're gonna play the good exhaust cards, but I don't think you're gonna play like the mediocre exhaust cards just because they say exhaust on them. I think you're going to be playing the mediocre speed cards just because they say, do something when, you get to max speed, because you're going to be getting to max speed. And, 3-mana 3/3 is just not that good. But it has the ability to scale. It is, like there's obviously upside with this card, but I can't really imagine myself being happy pack one pick wanting this. I think this is worse than the Raptor from LCI because, the Raptor was a 4/3, and the Raptor underwhelmed. The Raptor was underwhelming. Boommobile. 2 red for a 5/5 vehicle. When this vehicle enters, add 4 mana of any one color. Spend this mana only to activate abilities. It has exhaust for X and 2 in a red. This vehicle deals X damage to any target. Put a +1/+1 counter on this vehicle. And it has crew 2. So, in most game states, there's going to be something with 1 toughness that this is going to be able to deal with, even on turn 4. And on turn like 5 or whatever, you could play this and remove a 2/2. Like, there's so many good rates that this has. You can also activate other exhaust abilities if you want. Like, you don't have to exhaust this immediately, though in most spots you're probably going to want to, because you're basically just throwing away 4 mana, but, this ability is kind of costed as if you're going to have 4 mana to throw away on it. Yeah, this is just a really strong vehicle. The only issue with this is the double pipped ness of it. It's pretty big, 5/5 for crew 2 for 4. That's not small. It's a significant sized vehicle. I think it's good. Burner Rocket. 1 in red for a 3/1 vehicle with flash. When it enters, target creature you control gains +2/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. It has crew 1. Yeah, this is just great. It's a 2-mana trick, right? So 2-mana tricks, not always the best, but what they do, like, in terms of rate. But this one obviously makes a vehicle afterwards, which is very strong. It does a very good job of enabling max speed, which, as I've just said, is sort of something I think you really do care about. Is it a good 2-drop? No. So that's the reason. Like, you could be like, oh, tier 2's too high. It's not a good 2-drop. Do you really want to draft this that high? It's like, well, the trick on it is very strong. +2/+0 trample. It doesn't save your creature, but it means that the thing always trades up. It enables attacks in the mid game on like turn 4, turn 5, and you're kind of always getting a 2-for-1 because you get this extra piece of material in play on your trick, which is very powerful. Yeah, I don't know. I like it a lot. Maybe I'm overrating it. Maybe I'm going too hard, saying this thing is very strong. But I could, tier 3 is maybe a better home, right? Do you really want to take this picks 2 through 4? I could see a world, right? We were taking. I guess the combat tricks kind of always have diminishing returns. I should probably bump it down a bit. Even like one of the best combat tricks we've had in Urza at Karlov Manor last year, which made a clue and gave +2/+2. I think this is worse than that, and that was like a tier 2, almost a tier 2 card, just tier 3, tier 2 range. This I think is a little worse, so I'll put it in tier 3 for now. Burnout Bastronaut. Single red mana for a 1/1 with menace. It has start your engines. And you can pay 2 mana to give it +1/+0 until end of turn, and at max speed it has double strike. I mean, this is the perfect engine enabler, right? It's a 1-drop that starts your engines, which means that you're like once you have your engines on, they're on for the rest of the game, which is great. And it has menace, so it's just gonna get your engines to 2 on turn 2. If you have it on 1 every single time, it's just basically impossible to block. And it's just gonna be hard to block for the entire game, and it's gonna turn on your max speed. Like, you're gonna be at max speed on like turn 4 with this card, and that's gonna happen very consistently. I would say 70% of because your opponent has to. I mean, your opponent can kill it, right? There's removal spells, but they have to use a removal spell on your 1-drop that started your engines. It's not that bad of a deal for you. And they probably didn't. Maybe they got to do it on 1, but maybe they have to take turn 2 or turn 3 off to prevent you from getting to max speed. Obviously, once this gets to max speed, it becomes almost unblockable. It has double strike and it has a trick attached to it. So, yeah, very, very powerful 1-drop. Chandra Spark Hunter. 3 and a red for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose up to 1 target vehicle you control. Until end of turn, it becomes an artifact creature and gains haste. It has a +2 to sacrifice an artifact or discard a card if you do draw a card. And it has a 0 to create a 3/2 colorless vehicle with crew 1. And it has a -7 with, you get an emblem whenever an artifact you control enters. This emblem deals 3 damage to any target. So that emblem is actually kind of feasible to reach. You can go plus, minus. And that's like, I mean, it's not crazy to imagine a game where that happens, right? Creating a 3/2 vehicle is fine, but it's not something you super care about. And you do care a lot about, turning your stuff into cards. Like, turn 4, play this plus, you're at 6 loyalty. It's going to be hard to kill the Chandra, right? It's at 6 loyalty, and that's pretty good already, and then you can do it. And if you want to, make an artifact creature, like, with haste, that's also a thing that's good. So, I mean, the Chandra just kind of does it all, right? There's nothing, there's really nothing to say. It's just very strong. Clamorous Ironclad. 3 and a red for a 6/3 vehicle with menace and crew 3. It has cycling for a single red. So without cycling, this card would be unplayable. With cycling, I think it's pretty good. Red is the color that cares the most about cycling, especially one mana cycling. So you'll play this in your deck only because it says cycling on it, and you will very, very, very rarely actually cast it. But yeah, for that purpose, it's pretty good. Count on Luck. Red, red, red. At the beginning of your upkeep, it's an enchantment. Exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So it's a, we've had these style of effects in Limited before. This one is extremely hard to cast. If you can cast it, it's probably pretty decent, right? So, it's decent. If you can cast it, it's decent, but you better be mono red or have 13 red sources in your deck, because otherwise it's not great. There's not a ton of enchantment hate in this set. There's a lot of artifact hate, but enchantments actually are kind of skating by in this set. Broken Wings is kind of the one that gets you. And Broken Wings is going to be main deckable this set because of the number of artifacts, I feel. This, I have it in tier 5, maybe that's too low. I'm not going to, I would have to wheel this to play it, right? And I don't know if it's ever gonna, when a card has to, when I have to be wheeling it to play it, it's gonna be in tier 5. But I'm not saying it's weak necessarily. I just think the casting cost is really prohibitive. Crash and Burn. 3 in a red for an instant. Choose 1, destroy target vehicle, or deal 6 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So usually these effects are 5 mana, and they've cut a whole mana off it. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. The fact that it can destroy a vehicle at instant speed, it's very strong. 6 damage is a lot of damage. It's going to be really hard for your opponent to not get beat by this, and it's just, it seems very strong. But one thing is, it's a 4 mana interactive spell. How strong are those? I don't know. I just think the fact that this can destroy a vehicle is very powerful at instant speed. Maybe I'm overrating it. Maybe this is too high. But I think this is, it's definitely weaker than, so would I take this or Lightning Strike, right? Lightning Strike's in the set, we'll rate it later. I could see a scenario where I'm taking this over Lightning Strike. Like if like I would probably take first Lightning Strike over this because it's half the amount of mana. But like second Lightning Strike, it gets like this does different things. I don't know. I could definitely see it. So I'm gonna leave it in here, and maybe I'm a little too high on it. Duretti Rocketeer Engineer. 4 and a red for a star 5. Its power is equal to the greatest mana value among artifacts you control, and whenever it enters or attacks, you choose target artifact card in your graveyard. You may sacrifice an artifact. If you do, return the chosen card to the battlefield. So this requires a lot of setup. There are a high number of artifacts in the set. There are artifact tokens, but there's just like way better stuff to do, I would think. Um, like you, I don't know. There's just so much setup required for this that it's not that great. The 5 mana 5/5 there are spots where it will do something. Basically, is what I'm saying. But it's not. It doesn't excite. Doesn't excite me. It doesn't really do. It's just kind of weird. It's kind of a weird card that has a reasonable stats and you can kind of play in your deck. And it's not like the complete worst, but I'm not excited about it at all. Draconautics Engineer. Single, 1 on a red for a 2/2. It has exhaust for a single red mana. Other creatures you control gain gain haste until end of turn, and you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. And it also has exhaust for 3 in a red to create a 4/4 red dinosaur dragon creature token with flying. Yep, this is actually very insane. So the 2-drop comes with a 4 mana 4/4 flyer attached. I mean that's just excellent. And also it can be Imidane's Recruiter, which is also really good. This is just Imidane's Recruiter again, except it's a rare this time. Yeah, I don't know. It's strong at every stage of the game. Honestly, the worst time to play it is like turn 2. But when you play it on turn 2, your opponent better remove it. You probably don't want to play this. You probably want to play this on turn 3. Turn 3 is kind of because you get a 3/3 haster, and your opponent might have used a removal spell already. I don't know. Oh, it doesn't give itself haste. Well, nevertheless, yeah, that's it. This guy is very strong. Dracosaur Auxiliary. 4 red for a 4/4 flying haste. Whenever this creature attacks while saddled, it deals 2 damage to any target and has saddle for 3. I mean, this is very strong, right? So it's a 6 mana 4/4 haste dragon, which is a little higher than you'd like. 5 mana 4/4 flying haste dragon is always good. 6 is you're starting to get to the point where maybe it's not quite as good. But the fact that you can saddle it and start picking off your opponent's creatures is very strong, and I think this card is very strong as a result. Obviously, it's a 6-drop, so with that in mind. But yeah, Dynamite Diver. It dives. I don't know why it's called whatever. Anyways, it's a pilot. That's why I called it a driver. Single red for a 1/1. It saddles, mounts, and crews vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. When this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. Yeah, this is quite good. It's the fact that it can enable your speed to increase without your opponent really having any control over that is strong. You can sacrifice this, hit them in the face for 1, and your speed increases without having to get in. That is a powerful thing to have access to. And just crewing stuff, kind of nice. Like it just kind of is on the battlefield. It's going to be hard to attack into, and it's going to be annoying to block. So this card's going to be a solid role player. It's not an artifact, so if this were an artifact, I would actually have it in tier 2, I think, but it's not. So I'm leaving it here. Although red cares a little less about artifacts than some of the other colors. End Rider Catalyzer. 1 in a red for a 3/1 with start your engines, and at max speed it taps to add 2 red mana. This is whatever. I don't really think you want this. It does start your engines, but there's better cards that do that. And it dies to everything. I think it doesn't, you know what I mean? 2 mana 3/1s are oh, it can crew stuff, but that stat line still has all the issues with it that it has had for the last, 2 years or so. And yeah, I'm not super excited about this. It theoretically it kind of wants you to be doing exhaust things, but it says speed on it. I don't know. End Rider, Spike Spitter. Jeez, these names are just we're struggling today. 3 in a red for a 3/4 with reach. It has start your engines. And at max speed at the beginning of your upkeep, you exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So, as much as I like all the cards that do stuff at max speed, this one seems a little small to me. 4 mana 3/4 reach, not very good. It's a little small. Um, Obviously, if you're at max speed, this card's great, but it just dies to like all the removal spells. Like this card trades evenly with the red deal 6, right? That's not really great for you. Um, it doesn't trade down so much. Like it doesn't die to lightning strike, so that's good. But it it strikes me as one of those cards that's like, well, I'm already like my opponent didn't use a removal spell on this, and now I get to be good. And even then, it's like still not always on. So I'm not a huge fan of this. Fuel the Flames, 2 in a red for an instant. It deals 2 damage to each creature, and you can cycle it for 2 colorless mana. So usually they make these sorceries because they're actually big blowouts. I could even see moving this up a tier. The reason I'm not is because it's going to get cycled more than it gets cast. And so it's not going to like feel, you know what I mean? It's not going to like feel as bad. But when this is good, it's going to be great. I think it was a wise choice to make this cycle for 2 colorless instead of 1 red. I think that was wise. The card would be significantly better if it's cycled for 1 mana. I still think it's very good though. There's not a ton of like going wide stuff necessarily happening. At least I haven't seen that. But this is always going to have like something to do. So I think it's good. Full Throttle. 4 red for sorcery. After this main phase, there are 2 additional combat phases. At the beginning of each combat this turn, untap all creatures that attack this turn. So this is really weird. I don't know what to do with this. It's kind of like a worse Time Walk. You get 3 attacks. You get to attack 3 times. It feels kind of like, and hold on, let me go find. It's your Flying Crane tech. I think it's Flying Crane technique from Kondotark here, which was 6 mana. Give all your creatures flying and double strike until end of turn. This card kind of feels like that card, except worse in every way, other than it's monocolored. That card, and people loved that card. People thought that card was busted. Then in my set review, I did not grade it very high. People were like, "Nah, that card's busted." Then the set came to Arena. Card was not that good. It was fine, but it was not like it was not busted. It was just a fine card. You could put it in your deck, and it wasn't busted. This card is, I think, slightly worse than that card. Like if you have good attacks, it's good. If you don't have good attacks, it's bad. If you have good attacks already as a red deck on turn 6, the game is probably already over. So I don't really think this does more like what you want. Gastral Blockbuster. 2 in a red for a 3/2. When this creature enters, you may sacrifice a creature or vehicle. When you do, destroy a target artifact and opponent controls. You're going to want to have access to this effect. The body is pretty bad, but I think there's plenty of things to sacrifice in the set, and I think you'll want to play this. Like, I mean, think about like what decks it goes in. Red black. I think so. I do think it will go in red black. I don't think it's going to be premium there. Blue red, probably not. Probably not in blue red. Red white, probably yes. I think red white. I think it will go in red white. Red green. I'm not sure about red green. So it's really just kind of like it's kind of more of a sacrifice card than it is like an artifact removal card. But it's a strong effect to have attached to a creature. We know this. So I think this will be good, but I don't think it's going to be busted. Gastal Thrill Roller. 2 in a red for a 4/2 with trample and haste. When it enters, it becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. It has crew 2. You can pay 2 in red to discard a card and return it from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Activate only as a sorcery. So you get like a bunch of, it's a big, thing that attacks for 4, ups your speed. It's a vehicle. It's an artifact. Solid card. I don't think it's busted. I don't think it's completely busted or anything, but it definitely looks strong to me. Um, yeah. Gilded Goda. 1 and a red for a 2/2 mount. When this creature attacks while saddled to create a treasure token, it has saddle 1. Very bare bones card, very simple. I don't really know what deck this is supposed to be for. Making a treasure when it's saddled is actually like pretty relevant though, because it is an artifact, and like the ability is not as bad as I think it kind of could seem. But the problem is this just doesn't attack very well. It's a 2-mana 2/2. It doesn't really attack all that well, and you have to saddle it. It's only saddle 1. I'm not excited about this. I think it's not completely unplayable, but it doesn't excite me. There's no deck that I'm excited to put this in. Goblin Surveyor. 2 and a red for a 3/2 with trample and start your engines. At max speed, you exile this card from your graveyard and draw a card. So, similar to the black one, this one I like a decent amount. So, its rate is very bad. All the rates on this are bad. This whole cycle is like bad rate, but also you can exile it from your graveyard at max speed. Where does this one fall in my rankings of the cycle? I think it's better than the blue one. Actually, is that even true? Do I actually think that? I'm not even sure I think that. The blue one's pretty... This was pretty similar to the blue one. Flying might even be better than trample, but that's a 2/2. This is a 3/2. It doesn't ever attack. It can cruise stuff better. The thing is that you can there's more in red. There are more ways to discard this for value. Like you can discard it and then have it in your graveyard and draw cards. So that's kind of why I think I like it a little bit more. I'm gonna leave it here. I could definitely see myself being a little too high on this because your discard. Do you really need more value from your discards? I mean, it's always nice to get a little extra value, but do you need it? I don't know. Grease Wrench Goblin. Single red for a 2/1 with Exhaust for 2 and a red. You can discard up to 2 cards and then draw that many cards. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So this is kind of what I'm talking about with the last card, where there's just a lot of ways to discard that, and then whatever. This is a sick 1-drop. It's a 1-mana 2/1 that gets value as the game progresses. Those are always good. And yeah, I don't really have anything to say about it. It's just very strong, and you're gonna play it in every red deck. Hazoret Godseeker. 1 and a red for a 5/3 with Indestructible and Haste. It has Start Your Engines, and it has 1 and tap. Target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn, and Hazoret can't attack or block unless you have max speed. So this is going to be really hard to deal with. There are, there's a white exile removal spell. There is a black -6/6. Notably, the black -2/2 does not work on this because it does 3 toughness. You might be saying, why is this in tier 2 and not tier 1? It does kind of need help, is kind of my thing. It's going to be good. You play this on turn 2, your opponent's going to be afraid. But it isn't attacking or blocking right now. It will take a few turns for it to be able to attack or block. It's kind of all in on being aggressive, right? Really what you want to do is play this on turn 3. You play this on turn 3, tap it immediately, get your creature through, and then, you are at speed 2 now. And now that's really, that's when the threats start piling up, right? The thing is, there's so much starting engines that, is that actually, you know what I mean? Maybe that makes this better. We can just kind of go through, can colors interact with this? Black can for 5 mana, white can for 2 mana on average, but sometimes it's 5 mana. So 3 mana on I would say 3 mana on average-ish for white. Blue can with unsummon and also the 4 mana bounce. Green. Yeah, I don't think green can. I think green and red are kind of walled against this. Green and red are walled, but everything else has ways of dealing with this once it's in play. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm being too much of a hater, but I think it's going to be good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm obviously not saying it's bad. I'm just kind of arguing for tier 2 instead of tier 1. Kind of nitpicky. I don't know. Howl Squad Heavy. 2 in a red for a 2/3 with Start Your Engines. Other goblins you control have haste. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. That token attacks this combat if able. And at max speed, you can tap it to add red mana for each goblin you control. So it's always going to be at least one. Yeah, I mean, this is strong, right? It's just, Goblin, Rabble Master. The goblin has to attack every turn, which is bad. Like, the first one's probably going to get eaten. But, the second one, it's you can get into this game of a spot where your opponent, like when you have a creature that must attack each turn of Fable, you have to attack with it. So your opponent is more likely to block because you have to attack. So them playing around a combat trick is going to lessen because they want to get your creature off the board and it had to attack. So the odds that you have a trick are not necessarily high. And yeah, I mean, this just Rabble Masters are always good, so this one's going to be good. I can't see a world where it's not good. Also, if the goblin survives, it doesn't have to attack the next turn. So that's also kind of a notable thing about this as well. Kickoff Celebrations. 1 in a red for an enchantment. Start Your Engines. When this enchantment enters, you may discard a card if you do draw 2 cards, and at max speed, sacrifice this enchantment. Creatures and vehicles you control gain haste until end of turn. Kind of nice of them to say creatures and vehicles you control gain haste. There would have been a time in the past when they would have said creatures you control gain haste, because as a player you're like, well, I could just crew my vehicle and then sacrifice it, and then it'd be a creature and it would gain. But this just it's just it helps. It's good. It's a good design decision to do that. But yeah, this is going to be really solid in every red deck. I think you're going to always want to play it. I can't imagine a red deck not wanting to play this. Obviously, it doesn't impact the board, but it starts your engines on turn 2. That's good. You need to be doing that. And it does allow you to rummage. So no complaints here. This card's going to be good. I don't think it's going to be busted or anything, but I do think you're going to want at least 1, maybe 2 copies of this in most red decks. Lightning Strike. 1 in a red, instant. It deals 3 damage to any target. It's a good card, people. It's a good card. We know it. We know it's good. Yep. I don't know. I don't see any reason to rate this differently than it was the last time it came around. So. Mackin Artillerist. I don't know if I pronounced any of these names correctly today. 2 in a red for a 1/4. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, this creature deals that much damage to each opponent. Cycling 1 in a red. When you cycle this card, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So obviously, again, it kind of works with the speed thing, right? So you cycle it, you tick up a speed without having to attack. 3 mana 1/4 is a bad stat line. Actually, though, hold on. Maybe I'm believing in this. Maybe I'm actually believing. Wait a minute. I saw this at first and thought it was terrible, but now I'm thinking about it and I'm like, is this actually good? Is this actually playable? Does this actually do a thing? Like, this is kind of a deck, right? Like, what deck does it go in? Doesn't really, I guess black red is kind of the deck. Black red. But like, blue red doesn't really want this, I don't think. I think blue red's attacking. Red white, I think, also doesn't want this. Red green, who fucking knows, to be honest. Like, who knows, man? Like, that's a color pair that I just don't even know. It does cycle. It's a 3 mana 1/4. It doesn't crew anything as kind of the concern. I guess it does, kind of. It does 1 damage on cycle. I'm gonna bump it up. I'm gonna bump it up a tier. Yeah, I think I'll bump it up a tier. It just cycles. I think that's at the end of the day. I mean, obviously it costs a red mana to cycle, which kind of sucks, but it's 4 toughness. You can kind of block stuff. It it's gonna turn your speed on, like, without having to attack, which I think is relevant. So yeah, I'm gonna be a believer. I'm gonna be a believer in this a little bit. Marauding Mako. I don't know. Single red for a 1/1. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, put that many +1/+1 counters on this creature, cycling 2. Just excellent. Obviously, it's just an excellent a payoff for everything red is doing. You can play it on turn. You can play it on turn one. Your opponent has to kill it. If they don't kill it, it's probably gonna become like a 5/5. Um, Even on turn two, you can play the enchantment, discard a card. It's already a 2/2. We're off to the races, right? Turn three, boosted sloop. It's a 3/3. Everything's going. Everything is happening. That's not even like a crazy game state. That's like fairly regular that you can do that. You can cycle on turn two. You can do everything. This thing, it does everything. It does it all. It even cycles itself if you draw it in the late game. So yeah, I didn't. This is going to be really strong. Maybe tier one's a bit over, ambitious, but I just everything in the set works with every red card in like the entire set works with this. So I think it's going to be very powerful. Outpace Oblivion. 2 and a red for an enchantment with Start Your Engines. When this enchantment enters, it deals 5 damage to up to one target creature or planeswalker, and you can pay 2 to sacrifice it. It deals 2 damage to each player who doesn't have max speed. So hopefully that's going to be your opponent. But yeah, I mean, Starting Your Engines, like, it's just a nice little, it's a good removal spell. 3 mana, deal 5. Obviously, it's a sorcery. That's not really what you want, but you'll take it, and you're gonna play this. Like, there's a lot of removal in this set. There's a lot of red removal. There's a lot of black removal. Actually, there's less black removal. There's 3 black removal spells. There's like a bunch of red removal spells though. No, there's actually more black. Whatever. All right. Pace Setter Paragon. 2 and a red for a 2/3 with exhaust for 2 and a red. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It gains double strike until end of turn. This is kind of like exactly why I hate exhaust. Like, this creature, like, oh, I could threaten to activate my exhaust ability in combat. Wow, it's 3 mana. I spent all my mana doing that, and then you had a removal spell. Like, this thing, it doesn't block. It doesn't do anything. It does nothing. I hate it. I hate everything about it. I hate all that it stands for. It doesn't even gain double strike permanently. It just gains it till end of turn. So, like, you could even just block. Be like, okay, well, I'm just going to block. You're going to activate this, gain double strike. It just becomes a 3/4 after. You spent your whole turn doing that. You know what I mean? Like, that's... I don't... Like, what is appealing about this? I don't understand. It doesn't even have, like, speed stuff on it. I don't know. I don't believe. I have no belief. I have no faith. I have just no faith in this card. Pedal to the Metal. X on a red, instant. Target creature gets +X/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. So you can play a 1 mana, give your creature first strike trick to trade up. But the problem is you have to pay extra mana to, like, get up there. They had this in Midnight Hunt, and it gave Trample in first strike. Notably, Trample, very good with an X-Pump spell because you can basically just, force through a bunch of damage to your opponent's face if you're not doing anything extra with the mana. This, a lot worse, I would say. I think this is considerably worse than the trick at common, because it doesn't have... I kind of wish they just reprinted the one from Midnight Hunt. Obviously, the flavor doesn't work, but, like, I feel like that would have been fine. I don't know. I don't like this. I'm not a huge fan of this. It doesn't excite me. Maybe I'll be wrong about it. The X does allow you to spend extra mana, but I just think you're going to be spending your mana, like, cycling and doing other stuff. Prowcatcher Specialist. 1 and a red for a 2/1 with haste. It has exhaust for 3 and a red, but 2+1/+1 counters on it. It's really not a great 2-drop. Like, 2 mana 2/1 haste. It's kind of fine. We don't really ever see that. It's kind of a weird stat line. You just don't really ever see it. But I don't hate it. I really don't hate it. The fact that, on turn 4, you can, if you don't have anything else to do, you can make this into a 4/3. It's not great, but it's something. It just seems like an okay 2-drop, and I think it's better than some of the other okay 2-drops. I should move it down a tier, actually. Yeah, I'm going to do that. It's just that no part of this card is premium, and even if you even after investing with the 4 mana into it, it still dies to Lightning Strike, and you can still get blown out. Like, I just think, how good is a 2 mana 2/1 haste? It's okay. I just don't think it's, like, game winning. Push the Limit. 5 red sorcery. Return all mounts and vehicle cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. Vehicles you control become artifact creatures until end of turn. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. Notably, the mounts don't get saddled. I don't know. Sure, fine. I don't know. This is bad. Don't play it. You don't need this or want it. So just don't do it. Reckless Velocitor. 300 for a 3/3. When this creature saddles a mount or crews a vehicle during your main phase, that mount or vehicle gains +2/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. No. Obviously, this looks kind of appealing. It's like, oh, I can play my 4-mana 3/3 and crew something. It's like, oh, wait, I have played a 4-mana 3/3. That's really bad. That's actually not good. Again, 4-drop that dies to 2-mana removal spell or 3-mana removal spell or whatever without getting any value is bad. It does crew 3, fine. Yes, it gives trample, fine. We have the 2-mana vehicle that does this. Like, the 2-mana vehicle that does this just does it. Like, you don't have to do all this work. Frankly, I don't want to. I don't want to. I have no interest in doing that. Road Rage, single red, instant. It deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, where X is 2 plus the number of mounts and vehicles you control. Excellent. It's a shock. Sometimes it's a lightning bolt. Can't go face. Whatever. Fine. If it ever deals 3 damage, you're just thrilled. Like, it's going to deal 3 damage sometimes. In those instances, it's going to be excellent. Sky Crash. 1 in a red, instant. Destroy target artifact. Cycling, single red. Again, perfect. Does everything. I can't imagine not putting this in a red deck. I just think it's going in every single one of your decks that's red. I think I would play like 5 copies of it. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I might play 6 copies. You could just cycle them all for 1 mana. This is actually like if you have enough mountains in your deck, you can cut lands for these. If you have enough mountains, you can cut lands. You need probably like 10 mountains, 11 mountains, but you can start cutting lands for these type of 1 mana cyclers if you have enough. So yeah, this is just excellent. Spire Mech Cycle. 4 in a red, 5/4. Vehicle, haste, exhaust, tap, another untapped mount or vehicle you control. This vehicle becomes an artifact creature. Put a +1/+1 counter on it for each mount and or vehicle you control other than this vehicle. I mean, this is just excellent, right? So it's essentially a 5-mana 6/5 haste creature. It's not, right? You need to have another mount or vehicle. But what's the game state where by turn 5 you haven't played a vehicle in this set? I just don't really think it exists. I think you're going to have a vehicle in play that you can tap, and it's 0 mana. It's 0 mana to do that. Even if you don't, it's still a 5-mana 5/4 vehicle with haste that you can attack with immediately if you want. And that's still okay. It's bad. It's not a good downside to have. Like, that's obviously not a good card, but the exhaust is free, and it's just permanent, right? It just becomes a creature. It doesn't go back to being a vehicle. It just becomes a creature. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like a very strong 5-drop to me. Thunderhead Gunna. 4 in a red for a 4/5 with reach. It has the ability discard a card, draw a card. Activate only as a sorcery and only once each turn. This is sick. This is just insane, obviously. There's a reason that you can only activate this ability as a sorcery, because if you could activate it once during your turn and once during your opponent's turn, it would be just nuts. It's big, too. This is a big 5-drop. Like, I'm going to be playing this card. I'm going to be playing this guy. I can tell you right now, I'm going to be playing this freaking shark, okay? I'm going to be playing this thing. Why? It's big, it's got reach, and immediate, ETB, basically. It has the ETB, discard a card, draw a card, if you want, and you can do that every turn for the rest of the game. Enables all your things that want to discard cards. That's all Red's best cards do that. I mean, this card is just a complete house. This card rocks. I love this card. It's in tier 3 because it's a 5-drop, but I love this card. I love this card. It might be my favorite red card. I'm just going to be honest. It's sweet. And the last red card, Tyrox Tyrant. Okay, whatever. 1 in a red, 4/1. The 4/1 doesn't really solve any of the problems that the 3/1s have, where they just kind of like get blocked by everything, and this one has no ETB, it has no engines stuff. I don't, it has no types either. So I don't really believe in this. as much as I like, the simplicity of having vanilla creatures in Magic the Gathering sets, and I do, I like it. I like the idea. It's, you know, I kind of want to do it in a way that Foundations does it, not in a way that Aetherdrift has done it, where they're like, "Ooh, it's a mechanic where there are cards that say if the creature doesn't have any abilities, you can do stuff with it." I'm like, this seems like maybe not the way I would go about this, but it is what it is. That's it. This thing obviously cruise stuff, but who cares? You got so many things that do that. That's it. That's it for the red cards. Red looks great. Maybe the best color. Might be the best color. Might be. Some of its uncommons are very excellent. It has great removal. Red white is going to be. Red white and red blue are both going to be very good decks. I would be shocked if either of those decks is not very strong. Um, so yeah. Well, if you like this, there are going to be other Aetherdrift set review videos. There are going to be other videos maybe about Aetherdrift, and I will see you next time.